Chapter 35. Should our civilization go 500 years backwards? It has been said that a preacher named Jesus died in the year 30 AD, and Christianity took over Europe as the Roman Empire weakened into tolerance and later fell. The Roman Empire was shattered by barbarian hordes. Rome didn't survive, but Christianity did. Ideas and memes are hard to kill because they are spiritual and of the mind. They do not exist except in the minds of men. Muhammad was a warlord and lived at around 570 AD and began spreading his philosophy and religion, his meme, across the Middle East, Turkey, and Africa. The Muslims were so hungry for territory and power that at one point the Ottoman Empire was a vast, sprawling Muslim empire that controlled much of the Middle East until the end of World War I. Herein lies the rub. Christianity is nearly 500 years ahead of Islam in ideology, and this is simply because Christianity is 500 years older than Islam and has had more time to grow, explore, and move from intolerant warrior culture to a tolerant, pacifist, female-ruled culture. This 500-year gap explains why the Islamic people are so different from the Christian people. The Jews, the Christians, and the Muslims in their religious narratives are all somewhat describing the same spiritual laws, and same stories form three different perspectives on one God. They have different names for the same God and fight to the death about the small difference in ideology and for small pieces of land in the Middle Eastern desert. Such is the power of memes. While Islam covers its women in burqas to hide and protect them from raiding, militant bandits, and rapists, in the early 19th century, Christian women wore bonnets covering most of their heads. Much like a burqa, dresses down to their ankles and were covered up to the neck and the hands. Not a single piece of flesh was seen on a woman's body, much like the Islamic dress of women today. In Islamic Sharia law, they practice barbarism and medieval things that we cannot comprehend in the modern West. They behead people ceremoniously, pour acid on women's faces to teach them a lesson, practice female clitoral mutilation to rob women of pleasure, cut off hands, ears, noses, and limbs to teach people lessons in the violent and bloody Sharia law. This seems like butchery and barbarism to the West today, but we forget our own butchery and barbarism of 500 years ago when medieval Europe was doing the exact same things in the exact same point of their development. Female mutilation, covering of women for protection and property, cutting of hands of thieves, public beheadings, and cutting off ears, noses, and limbs to teach people a lesson. Julius Caesar was famous for cutting off the arms of his conquered ennemis and sending his enemies running into the countryside with no arms, bleeding, to run to their doom. He then slaughtered women and children in sacked states, or would sell scores of conquered women and children into slavery for his own profit and plunder. Caesar got rich off selling slaves and winning wars. We celebrate Julius Caesar and love him and study him because he was our killer and not their killer. Hitler was their killer. Caesar was our killer. Saddam Hussein was their killer. George W. Bush was our killer. Osama bin Laden was their killer. Barack Obama was our killer. It's the same idea over and over again. Should we let the violent, intolerant, militant people from Islam into our pacifist, tolerant, and weak society from the West? What do you think will happen? Likely a large slaughter of us or them. In America, the philosophy is different than in Canada. In Canada, we preach an ideology of multiculturalism, where other cultures can come in and have it your way, like the philosophy of Burger King. In America, instead of a mosaic, where every group can have it your way, America has traditionally been an intolerant, violent, warrior society of its own and has had a melting pot ideology where you become American when you emigrate to America. The trouble lies in America's tandem philosophy of religious freedom. America was born out of oppressed people looking for religious freedom. There are more than 35,000 sects of Christianity in the world, and to run a Judeo-Christian nation, you need to have religious freedom to accommodate all those types of Christianity. However, the new problem with Islam moving in is that because of their religious freedom, they do not have to assimilate into the melting pot. The melting pot conflicts with the religious freedom, and thus the system for dealing with this new kind of problem is not established. The Founding Fathers were worried about the King of England coming back over the ocean to reclaim his backwater American outpost, so they put several mechanisms in place, including religious freedom and a right to bear arms in the Constitution. They probably did not think of the time 200 years in the future when America would be fat, lazy, weak, and ready to die, bloated on its own richness and surrounded by hostile barbarian hordes that were willing to take it at any moment, and that these barbarians would infiltrate the perimeter through religious freedom and refugee status. The Founding Fathers couldn't see it coming, like the Trojans couldn't see the Trojan horse coming full of young, virile Greek warriors ready to kill every last Trojan man and rape every single woman into submission to take as war plunder for his own tribe and children. The Founding Fathers probably didn't consider that American birth rates in the civilized empire would reach low levels of around 1.2 children per family, whereas these religious freedom refugee barbarians would come in and have up to 8 children per family. They probably didn't consider the welfare system that would keep those 8 Muslim children alive because infant mortality in 1776 was high. The balance of society used to be, rich people had 2 children, poor people had 8 children. Infant mortalities and hard lives would kill 6 poor children, so rich and poor both had 2 surviving children. Such was the balance of capitalism and the free economy. It also had built-in population control for the rich and the poor. Today, what we see is rich Western families having 1.2 children and poor families on the welfare system having 8 children. Instead of 6 children dying, modern medicine keeps them alive, welfare keeps them alive, and in fact gives bonuses to single moms for having more kids. The 8 children grow up to vote more welfare programs and free grain for themselves, while the 1.2 rich children are surrounded and bred out of existence. What happens in 50 or 100 years when this trend has gone on for several generations and the poor Muslim refugees have outbred the Westerners to a point of majority for them and a minority for us? What happens when they can vote in Sharia law and subjugate Western people and Western ideology to memes and ideas that we grew out of 500 years ago in the Middle Ages? This would be a very rude awakening in history, but as the 4 stages of subversion go, in the end, the cycle ends with 1, civil war, or 2, invasion. In the case of birth rates, there is no need to invade. Just have enough kids funded by the welfare system, and in 50 years, you will have enough voting power to skip the invasion and go straight into enslavement of the weakened and subverted American people. Appeasing of governments which revel in slaughter is an invitation to worldwide catastrophe. The question is, will it be civil war first, followed by invasion as groups like Antifa, and what I believe will be a rise of a new white power group akin to the Nazis to protect the loss of white interests? It happened in Germany when the Germans were getting screwed by the French in the post-World War I war reparations. And it can happen again. Just remember that the Nazis were the National Socialists. America has become socialist, and I can see a rise of Nazis once more. These Nazis will be opposed by equally violent communist groups like Antifa, but at the end of the day, history has already demonstrated the mortal hate between the Nazi group and the communists in Germany in the 1930s, And to see this again would be just a repetition in the bloody pages of history,